On one of the last segments that we did, it was don't what tool would you not leave home without? And I reached in and I pulled out this jackknife tool I wouldn't leave without. And talking to my people after we shot that segment, it led up to another topic, one that really hasn't come in terms of emails or a summation of emails, and it's the follow-up was, what do you do when the lights go out? What do you do when the lights go out? 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was, I was bringing back an old schooner that I purchased up in Maine um, for restoration. My hobby is restoring wood boats, if you can imagine that masochistic thing. I design and build fiberglass boats, and I also restore wood boats. But nevertheless, bringing this old schooner back and off the coast of Maine, and it had a 32-volt electric system in it, which was, I knew, shaky. I'd done some repairs right before we left, and right outside of Penobscot Bay, the lights went out. Everything we had was a little smell of smoke, electrical, and everything shorted out, and there was no electric, and all the navigation equipment, everything shut down. I had a little chart plotter on the boat, and I had handheld GPS with me that I forgot to change the batteries, so the batteries were dead. And I was back 40 years ago or 35 years ago, whenever it was, in the pre-GPS, pre-Loran days. Um, and on a sailboat, the whole electric system goes out. And believe me, this stuff breaks, by the way. I don't care how old your boat is. Now, that was a very old boat in very shaky condition. Uh, but new boats, not too old boats even, uh, things break. Things break, especially electric. And you can find yourself completely without an electrical device, and as in a situation that we were in. And now, because of my age and because I go back all those years, the things that I never leave home to go anywhere without, and one of them is a pair of parallel rules. These parallel rulers, all right. And if you don't know much about navigating and how to use these, best you find out. It's in Chapman's and other books. It's a very simple device. But if you don't have it with you, you're really in a jam. These parallel rulers I'm holding in my hand here that I just pulled out of my nav bag are probably older than most of the folks that are watching this. But nevertheless, this very simple device, which has been around in one form or another for several hundred years. The other thing that you must have is a pair of dividers. Now, because of my art background, I use these sexy dividers, but a little compass, any kind of dividers that you can open and close so that you can pace your way across the chart, because every chart has a scale on a bottom, and if it's a big paper chart, if it doesn't have a scale on a bottom, or an Admiralty chart, you go over to the side of the chart to the latitude, and you can get nautical miles off of that and start figuring out where you're going. And the other thing I carry in my nav bag is this little cheap compass, which I've also had for so long. I have no idea how long I've had this, and probably paid maybe $5 for this thing. Um, with these three things, and obviously the one other thing is to have a paper chart kits. You want to have charts aboard the boat. Uh, nice thing about the folks at Chart Kit, we used to have 42 charts to go from Newport to Block Island, and now these people have put this in a very, very nice format and made life very, very simple in terms of finding your way around. So with just this, all right, if everything shuts down, uh, you still have you're still going to get there. It's a sailboat. Wind blows. You keep on moving, and the other thing, let me point out quickly, that I've gotten in the habit of doing, and it's only because I'm on a lot of old boats and stuff, and on these old restoration projects, is that every 3 or 4 hours, I try anyway, not always, but every 3 or 4 hours or a watch change, I mark the position so that if everything goes down, at least you know where you were a few hours ago, and you've got a starting place. And I just put a little circle, and I put the time and write it right on a chart, and take my pencil out, put a little mark, and write the time. And that's a leftover from years ago when everybody was doing dead reckoning. The reason I mention this is last year I was on down in the Bahamas on a very, very expensive Shannon that had actually one of the most elaborate electronic systems you could imagine, because it had redundancy, it had backups, it had everything aboard the boat. And these folks had traveled from the Caribbean back and forth up to Nova Scotia and commuting back and forth. So they covered a lot of ground. But I was really shocked to find that for all the stuff they had aboard, and they had every possible thing you can imagine, it was like unbelievable equipment on a boat. What was not aboard was a pair of parallel rulers, dividers, and a compass. All right, a little cheap compass. All right, they did have paper charts, but without these 3 things, all right, which probably cost all of maybe $50. Maybe it's a little more than $50 now since I bought this kind of stuff. But without these 3 things, you could get yourself in a real jam. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, yeah, but this jerk, if he had a handheld GPS in his hand and he just happened to forget the batteries, or let the batteries go dead, which is true. But, and there's a but, because down in Washington, there's a kid, all right, sitting in a Pentagon down in a basement someplace, God knows where, all right, with a switch, all right. And upon a command, he is able to flip that switch. The entire global positioning system shuts down, all right. They tested it a few years ago. I witnessed it. I watched it. When he hits that switch, everything goes down. So you don't have, and this happens to be related to, in case they're afraid of getting a missile shot in and somebody using a GPS system to attack America. If that kid hits that switch, the lights go out. So if there's a national emergency and you're in a tough spot, like I was up off the rock-bound coast of Maine, and they decide, for whatever reason, to hit that switch, and this whole thing shuts down, and you don't have just some basic stuff with you, you get yourself in a real jam. So maybe it's a jackknife that I carry with me every day, but I'll tell you, I never go anywhere. I wouldn't go from Bristol to Newport without having dividers, a compass, and a pair of parallel rulers, and most of all, a paper chart.